My dad always said tornadoes sound like freight trains. He lied. The night our house got hit, I learned what they actually sound like and why no survivor ever talks about it. But here's what's really haunting me. The tornado left, but something else stayed behind. You know that feeling when everything seems too perfect? When your mom's laughing at dad's terrible puns about burnt toast, and the dog's tail is doing that lazy thump against the window like he's keeping time to some invisible song? That was us that Tuesday night, just another ordinary evening in our little corner of nowhere. Where the biggest excitement usually comes from Mrs. Henderson's cat getting stuck in her mailbox again. Dad was in the kitchen doing his whole chef routine, which basically meant opening 3 different cans and pretending he invented something revolutionary. "Honey, taste this masterpiece," he called out, waving a wooden spoon like he'd just discovered fire. Mom giggled, actually giggled like some teenager. And I rolled my eyes so hard I probably saw my brain. They were being disgustingly cute. And honestly, I loved every second of it, even though I'd never admit that out loud. The evening air felt thick and warm, like summer couldn't quite decide if it wanted to stick around or pack its bags for fall. Our screens were wide open, letting in that sticky breeze that made everything feel sleepy and slow. Those puffy clouds were drifting overhead like lazy cotton balls, not a care in the world. Nothing looked threatening about them. Nothing at all. But here's the thing about small towns. We get excited about weather. The local news guy, Jim Patterson, was practically bouncing on his toes, talking about some storm system moving through later. "Folks, we've got some thunderstorms headed our way tonight. Nothing too serious, just your typical late-season activity." He said it with that fake smile weathermen always wear, like getting rained on is the most delightful thing that could happen to you. Dad barely glanced up from his gourmet creation. "Hope it cools things down," he mumbled, stirring something that looked suspiciously like SpaghettiOs with hot dogs. Mom was already setting the table, humming some song from her high school days that she swore was classic rock but sounded more like elevator music to me. Our dog, Buster, yeah, I know, super original name, had claimed his favorite spot by the living room window. His big golden head was resting on his paws, but his tail kept doing this rhythmic thump against the wall every few seconds. That dog had the most expressive tail in the universe, I swear. Happy thump, excited thump, worried thump, sleepy thump. Right then it was definitely Sleepy Thump, the kind that said he was content but keeping one ear open just in case something interesting happened. Then there's the soundtrack of home, you know, the refrigerator humming its steady tune, that old thing working overtime in the heat. Dad always said we needed a new one, but somehow we never got around to it. The lights flickered just a tiny bit, so quick you might miss it if you weren't paying attention. But nobody was worried. Our house was old, and old houses do weird things sometimes. The wiring probably remembered when electricity was still a fancy new invention. Mom called us to dinner, and we gathered around our scratched-up kitchen table like we had 1,000 times before. Dad's mystery concoction actually tasted pretty good, though I wasn't about to boost his ego by saying so. We talked about normal stuff, my upcoming math test, Mom's coworker who brought her annoying chihuahua to the office, Dad's boss who thought wearing a tie made him smarter than everyone else. The conversation flowed easy, comfortable, like worn-in pajamas. Outside, those lazy clouds kept drifting, and Jim Patterson's storm seemed like something that might happen to other people in other places. We were safe in our little bubble of ordinary Tuesday evening life, where the biggest drama was whether Dad had remembered to buy milk or if we'd be eating dry cereal in the morning. Looking back now, I wish I could have frozen that moment. Captured it in some magic snow globe where nothing changes and everyone stays exactly where they're supposed to be. Because sometimes ordinary evenings aren't really ordinary at all. They're the last normal thing you'll remember before everything goes completely sideways. Buster's tail kept thumping against the wall, steady as a heartbeat. The fridge hummed its familiar song. The lights flickered once more, barely noticeable. Just another peaceful night in our small town, where nothing exciting ever happened. Well, that's what we thought anyway. The sirens hit like a slap in the face. One second I'm laughing at Dad's terrible dad jokes about burnt chicken, the next second this bone-chilling wail is tearing through our quiet Tuesday evening. My fork literally froze halfway to my mouth because that sound, God, that sound means business. Mom's head snapped up so fast, I thought she'd get whiplash. "That's the tornado siren," she said, but her voice had this weird shake to it that made my stomach drop. The weird part is, we'd heard that siren before during monthly tests, but this time it felt different, angrier, more urgent. Like the whole town was screaming at us to wake up. Dad was already fumbling for his phone, fingers shaking as he pulled up the weather app. His face went white. "Jesus Christ," he muttered, then caught himself swearing in front of me. "Sorry, but honey, we've got a tornado warning. Red zone, coming right down Main Street." Right down Main Street. That's our street. Makes sense why my heart started hammering like a jackhammer, right? The neighbors were already going crazy outside. Mrs. Henderson from next door was practically shrieking at her husband to get their cat inside. The Johnsons across the street had their porch light flicking on and off like some kind of SOS signal. Everyone was moving fast, that kind of panicked fast where people bump into things and drop stuff because their hands won't work right. Then there's Mom, who suddenly transformed into this emergency response machine. She grabbed the big flashlight from the kitchen drawer, the heavy-duty one that could probably blind a burglar, and immediately started dialing Granny's number. Her fingers were steady now, like flipping some kind of survival switch made her calm down. "Mom, are you in your basement? Good. Stay there until this passes. I love you." But why do phone calls during emergencies always sound like final goodbyes? Dad was doing his own version of panic management, which involved pulling every curtain in the house closed. Heavy curtains, light curtains, even the stupid decorative ones that don't actually block anything. His voice had gone all tight and controlled, like he was trying to convince himself he wasn't scared. Weather radio says it's moving fast, maybe 15 minutes out. 15 minutes. That's barely enough time to microwave leftovers, and we're supposed to prepare for a tornado in 15 minutes? The rain started while he was still pulling curtains. Not regular rain, this was like someone upstairs turned on a fire hose and aimed it directly at our roof. The sound was deafening, this constant drumming that made it hard to think straight. Every few seconds, thunder would crash so loud it felt like the house was getting punched by a giant. Our dog Buster had already figured out something was seriously wrong. He was pacing in circles, whimpering this low, continuous whine that dogs make when they sense disaster coming. Animals know things we don't, and Buster was basically screaming that we needed to hide. His fur was standing up along his back, and he kept looking toward the windows like he could see something terrible approaching. The whole house started shaking, not just vibrating from the thunder, actually shaking, like the foundation was getting rattled by invisible hands. Pictures on the walls were tilting sideways. The chandelier in the dining room was swaying back and forth like a pendulum. Even the floor felt unsteady under my feet. Well, that's when Dad's controlled voice finally cracked. "We need to get to the bedroom. Now, everyone, move." Mom was still gripping that flashlight like a weapon, phone pressed to her ear as she tried calling our other neighbors. Mrs. Peterson wasn't answering. The Miller's line was busy. The whole neighborhood communication system was falling apart just when we needed it most. The wind was getting louder, not just howling, roaring, like standing next to a freight train that's going full speed, except the train is made of air and it's trying to rip our house apart. Windows were rattling so hard I thought they'd explode inward. The front door kept shuddering like something massive was throwing itself against it. Then the lights started flickering for real. Not just the little power hiccups from before, these were serious flickers that made shadows jump around the room like dancing ghosts. The refrigerator humming stopped. The dishwasher went quiet mid-cycle. Even the digital clock on the microwave was blinking confused numbers. And the weird part is, in the middle of all this chaos, I kept thinking about homework. Like, would school be canceled tomorrow? Would my math test get postponed? Your brain does stupid things when it's trying not to think about dying. Dad grabbed my shoulder, steering me toward the back bedroom. "Move, kiddo. This thing's almost here." But nothing could have prepared me for what came next. My mom's voice cut through the chaos like a knife. "Everyone under the bed." Now, the way she screamed it, you'd think the house was already falling apart. Well, guess what? It basically was. The wind had gone from howling to full-on demonic shrieking, and I swear the whole place was shaking like we were inside a washing machine on the fritz. Dad didn't argue for once. He just started grabbing every blanket and pillow he could find, shoving them under my parents' bed like we were preparing for some twisted sleepover. His hands were shaking so bad he dropped the flashlight twice. Makes sense, right? The guy who always acted tough during regular storms was losing it when an actual tornado decided to visit our neighborhood. I dove under first because, honestly, I wasn't about to stand around having a family meeting while Mother Nature threw her tantrum outside. The space under the bed felt cramped and dusty, like no one had vacuumed under there since the Clinton administration. But right then, that musty smell was the most comforting thing in the world. Well, almost comforting. Our dog, Max squeezed in next to me, his whole body trembling. His fur was standing straight up like he'd stuck his paw in an electrical socket. Poor guy's eyes were wide as dinner plates, and he kept whimpering this low, pitiful sound that made my heart ache. Animals know when something's really wrong, don't they? They can sense disaster coming way before we humans figure it out. Then there's the sound I'll never forget. The windows started rattling so violently, I thought they were going to explode inward. Actually, some of them did. I heard the sharp crack of glass somewhere in the house, followed by my mom's muffled curse words. She always got creative with her language during emergencies, but this time she was dropping words I didn't even know she knew. Dad squeezed under the bed last, muttering something about checking the weather radio. Too late for that, genius. The weather had already made its intentions pretty clear. The whole house groaned and creaked like it was having the worst day of its life. Every few seconds, another door would slam somewhere, bang, 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 like invisible people were running around playing the world's most terrifying game of hide and seek. But why does everything sound 10 times scarier when you're hiding under a bed? Maybe it's because you can't see what's happening, so your brain fills in the blanks with the worst possible scenarios. Every crash outside could be a tree falling on our roof. Every bang could be our neighbor's trampoline smashing through our kitchen wall. The weird part is, some of those scenarios were probably accurate. Lightning started flashing so fast it looked like someone was having a seizure with a strobe light. The shadows under the bed kept jumping and dancing, creating these creepy shapes that made Max whimper even louder. I reached over and scratched behind his ears, trying to calm both of us down. My parents were pressed against me on either side, and I could feel them flinching every time thunder exploded overhead. The tornado itself, when it got really close, sounded like a freight train having an argument with a jet engine. You know how people always say that, but until you hear it yourself, you don't understand how accurate that description is. It's this deep, rumbling roar that gets inside your chest and makes your whole body vibrate. Combined with the screaming wind, it created this symphony of pure terror that no horror movie soundtrack could ever match. Something heavy crashed into the side of our house, probably our neighbor's garbage cans or maybe their entire shed. The impact made the floor shake beneath us, and dust started raining down from the bed frame above. I closed my eyes and tried to pretend we were just playing an elaborate game of fort like when I was little. Didn't work. Reality has this annoying way of refusing to cooperate with your imagination. My dad kept checking his phone, but the screen showed no signal. The cell towers were probably getting the same treatment we were, a violent makeover courtesy of nature's worst mood swing. Mom was clutching her emergency flashlight so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Every few minutes she'd whisper something that sounded like a prayer, though I couldn't make out the exact words over the chaos. The tornado seemed to take forever to pass over us, but it probably only lasted a few minutes. Time gets weird when you're convinced you might die. Each second stretches out like taffy, and every sound becomes magnified into something potentially life-threatening. Then, just as suddenly as it had reached its peak, the roaring started to fade. The monster was moving on to terrorize someone else's neighborhood. I pressed my face against the dusty floorboards, trying not to breathe too hard. The roof above me groaned like an old man getting out of bed, except this sound made my stomach drop to my toes. Glass exploded somewhere in the house, maybe the kitchen window, maybe all of them. Honestly, I couldn't tell anymore because everything sounded like the world was ending. My dog pressed against my ribs, trembling so hard I thought he might shake apart. His fur felt electric, bristled up like he'd stuck his paw in a socket. Poor guy probably understood what was happening better than I did. Animals always know when nature's about to lose its mind. Right? Meanwhile, I'm the idiot who thought tornado warnings were just something that happened to other people in other towns. The crashing outside got worse. Trees splitting open. That's exactly what it sounded like. Imagine taking a massive oak tree and snapping it in half like a pencil. Then multiply that by every tree in the neighborhood. The sounds layered on top of each other until I couldn't separate one crash from another. My brain kept trying to identify what was breaking. Was that our fence? The neighbor's shed? Someone's car getting tossed around like a toy? Dust swirled everywhere under the bed, mixed with ancient toys I'd forgotten existed. A plastic dinosaur bounced off my cheek. Apparently even my old T-Rex couldn't escape this chaos. The air tasted metallic and sharp like licking a battery. Everything felt wrong, like the atmosphere itself had gone crazy. Then my phone died. Just like that, the The little emergency light went dark and left me in complete blackness. The one thing connecting me to the outside world, gone. No weather updates, no text messages, no way to know if this nightmare would ever end. The darkness swallowed every familiar shape in my room. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face, but the weird part is how the tornado sounded up close. Everyone talks about trains, how tornadoes sound like freight trains. That's not even close. This was like standing inside a jet engine while someone fed it rocks and metal scraps. The roar had layers deep rumbling underneath. Then this high-pitched screaming on top, then random crashes punctuating everything like violent exclamation marks. I started counting seconds between the crashes, thinking maybe I could time when it would pass. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, crash. 1 Mississippi, crash, crash. My counting system fell apart pretty quick. Turns out tornadoes don't follow any rhythm that makes sense to a kid hiding under a bed. The house shuddered with each gust, like a giant was grabbing it and shaking. I wondered if our foundation would hold or if we'd end up in the next county. The floorboards flexed under me, actually bent up and down like the whole structure was breathing wrong. That's when I realized how flimsy houses really are. All those walls and beams we trust to keep us safe? They're just wood and nails hoping not to meet something stronger. My mind started racing through stupid thoughts. Did I leave my window open? Would my homework still be on my desk after this? What if my favorite hoodie got sucked up and landed in someone else's yard 3 towns over? Fear makes your brain focus on the weirdest stuff. Here I am, possibly about to die, and I'm worried about a sweatshirt. The dog whimpered against my side, and I realized I'd been holding my breath without knowing it. Breathing felt dangerous, like making any noise might attract the storm's attention. Ridiculous, but that's how it felt, like this monster outside was hunting, and staying perfectly still might save us. More glass shattered, definitely in our house this time. The sound was too close, too sharp. I imagined our living room filled with glittering pieces, everything Mom loved getting destroyed in seconds. Dad's stupid jokes wouldn't fix this. No amount of laughter could sweep up this mess. The roar shifted, moving slightly. Was it passing over us? Hard to tell when you're trapped in darkness with your ears ringing. The wind still howled, but maybe, just maybe, it sounded a little different. Less like being inside the monster's mouth, more like it was looking for easier prey somewhere else. I pressed deeper into the floor, counting heartbeats instead of seconds. My heart hammered so fast I couldn't keep track anyway. The dog's breathing synced with mine, short, scared little puffs in the dusty darkness. Then something changed in the air pressure. My ears popped, the dog's trembling eased just slightly, though his muscles stayed coiled tight. Neither of us dared move yet, but something fundamental had shifted above us. The worst might be passing, but I had no idea what we'd find when we finally crawled out of this hiding spot. The silence hit me like a brick wall. 1 second the world was ending with that freight train roar, and the next nothing. Just heavy rain drumming on what was left of our roof. My ears were ringing so bad I thought I'd gone deaf, but then I heard it. Water dripping, glass crunching somewhere. The weird echo you get in a house that's been cracked open like an egg. I stayed under that bed for what felt like forever, afraid to move. My dog was pressed against my side, shaking like a leaf, and honestly, I was doing the same thing. The air smelled wrong. Metallic and sharp, like someone had mixed pennies with sawdust and thrown in some electrical fire for good measure. Makes sense, right? Half the neighborhood probably got their power lines ripped apart. When I finally worked up the courage to crawl out, my knees were shaking so bad I could barely stand. The bedroom looked okay, mostly. A few books had fallen off the shelf, and there was dust everywhere, but nothing too crazy. Then I walked into the living room, and my jaw just dropped. Our couch was flipped upside down like some giant had thrown a tantrum. The coffee table Dad built last summer, snapped in half, with one leg sticking through the wall, and the windows, man, the windows were just gone. Not broken, not cracked. Gone, like the tornado had sucked them right out of their frames and taken them for a ride. Glass was scattered everywhere, crunching under my feet like snow that could cut you. The front door was hanging by one hinge, swaying back and forth in the wind like it couldn't decide whether to fall off or hang on. Through the doorway, I could see our yard. And it didn't look like our yard anymore. It looked like a war zone. Our big oak tree, the one I used to climb every summer, was laying across the driveway, its roots sticking up in the air like some kind of weird sculpture. But the weirdest part, our mailbox was still standing, perfectly fine, not even tilted. The tornado had demolished half our house and tossed cars around like toys, but somehow it decided our mailbox was off limits. Go figure. I could hear voices outside, muffled and distant, neighbors calling out to each other, asking if everyone was okay. Someone was shouting names, probably looking for people who hadn't checked in yet. Dogs were barking from every direction, that panicked kind of barking that means they're scared out of their minds. Can't blame them. We all were. My dog finally crept out from under the bed, tail tucked so far under his belly it had practically disappeared. He sniffed around the living room, whimpering at all the wrong smells. Poor guy probably thought the world had ended. Honestly, looking at the mess around us, I wasn't sure he was wrong. The rain was still coming down hard, but it felt different now. Heavier somehow, like it was trying to wash away what the tornado had done. Fat chance of that. You can't wash away a flipped couch or magically fix windows that got sucked into the sky, but the sound was almost comforting after that awful roaring silence. I picked my way through the glass and debris to what used to be our front window. The whole neighborhood looked like someone had taken a giant blender to it. Mrs. Peterson's car was sitting in the Johnsons' front yard, and I'm pretty sure that's our patio furniture scattered across the street. A stop sign was bent completely backwards, pointing at the ground like it was ashamed of what it had seen. The air outside was thick and heavy, almost hard to breathe. Everything felt charged, like the tornado had left some kind of electricity behind. My skin felt tingly, and every sound seemed too loud and too quiet at the same time. It's hard to explain, but it was like the whole world was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. I could see flashlight beams moving around in the distance, people checking on each other, making sure everyone was accounted for. The street lights were all dark, probably would be for days. But there was something almost beautiful about all those little lights bobbing around in the darkness like fireflies made of hope. Standing there in what used to be my living room, watching the rain pour through the hole where our roof used to be, I realized something. The tornado was gone, but this was just the beginning. The real challenge wasn't surviving the storm, it was figuring out what came after, and right now, with my heart still hammering and my hands still shaking, that felt like the scariest part of all. The silence hit me like a slap in the face. After all that chaos, all that screaming wind and crashing glass, suddenly everything went dead quiet except for the steady drip of rain somewhere in the house. I crawled out from under the bed, my knees shaking so bad I could barely stand up. The first thing I did was call for them. Mom, Dad. My voice cracked like I was 12 again instead of 16. Nothing came back except the echo bouncing off what was left of our walls. I tried again, louder this time. Mom, Dad, where are you? Still nothing. Well, that's when the panic really started setting in. You know that feeling when your stomach drops and your heart starts hammering against your ribs? That was me, stumbling through our destroyed house like some kind of zombie. The living room looked like a bomb went off. Our couch was flipped upside down, the coffee table Mom loved so much was split clean in half, and there was glass everywhere. Everywhere. The big window that Dad always bragged about, the one with the perfect view of our garden, was completely gone. Just a gaping hole where it used to be. But here's the thing that really freaked me out. Their bedroom was empty. Not just empty like they'd stepped out for a minute, empty like they'd never been there at all. The bed was torn apart, sure, but there was no sign they'd ever made it under there with me. How was that even possible? We'd all run toward the bedrooms together when the sirens started wailing. My dog, Buster, kept whimpering and following me from room to room. His ears were pinned back flat against his head, and his tail was tucked so far under his belly I could barely see it. Even he knew something was seriously wrong. Dogs always know, don't they? Makes sense, right? They can probably smell fear better than we can feel it. I checked every single room twice. The kitchen where Dad had been making his famous chili just an hour before, destroyed. Cans scattered across the floor, the refrigerator knocked over and humming like it was dying. Mom's craft room where she spent hours making those ridiculous seasonal decorations, completely trashed. Her sewing machine was buried under a pile of wet insulation that had fallen from the ceiling. Then there's the bathroom where I found something that made my blood run cold. Mom's reading glasses, the ones she never went anywhere without, were sitting perfectly intact on the sink counter. Not a crack in them. Everything else in that room was demolished, but those glasses sat there like they were waiting for her to come back and pick them up. And the weird part is, I started talking to myself, actually having full conversations out loud because the silence was driving me crazy. Okay, maybe they went to check on the neighbors, I said, like some rational part of my brain was trying to keep the rest of me from completely losing it. Yeah, that's probably it. They're helping Mrs. Peterson next door. She's like 90 years old. But when I looked out what used to be our front window, I could see Mrs. Peterson's house, or what was left of it. The whole second floor was just gone, vanished. Like someone had taken a giant knife and sliced the top half clean off. I grabbed Mom's glasses and shoved them in my pocket, then pushed through the debris toward the front door. The door itself was hanging by one hinge, creaking back and forth in the wind. When I finally made it outside, the sight nearly knocked me over again. Our street looked like a war zone. Cars flipped upside down, trees twisted into shapes that shouldn't exist, chunks of houses scattered everywhere like someone had been playing with building blocks and got bored. The Hendersons' blue sedan was sitting in what used to be our vegetable garden, and I swear that car had been parked 4 houses down when the storm started. I could hear voices in the distance, people shouting names, but they sounded so far away. Flashlight beams swept back and forth through the darkness, like lighthouses searching for lost ships. That's when I started running toward them. Buster right behind me, both of us stumbling over branches and chunks of roof shingles. "Help!" I screamed at the top of my lungs. "My parents are missing. Has anyone seen my parents?" The voices got a little closer, but not close enough. Not nearly close enough. What I didn't know yet was that I was about to discover something that would change everything I thought I understood about that night. Something the rescue teams were already finding as they worked their way through the devastation. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stepped outside into what used to be my world. The tornado had carved a path through our neighborhood like some angry giant dragging a massive eraser across everything I knew. Houses that had stood for decades were just gone. Not damaged, gone. Where the Miller's Blue Ranch house should have been, there was nothing but a concrete foundation and scattered pieces of their life spread across 3 blocks. The news crews showed up faster than I expected, their bright vans looking ridiculously clean against the apocalyptic mess. I heard one reporter say over 1,000 homes got destroyed in our county alone. 1,000 homes, that's not just buildings. That's families, memories, entire lives just wiped away in 20 minutes. Makes you wonder how something so devastating can happen so fast, doesn't it? Our neighbor Mrs. Peterson wandered around her yard in her bathrobe, picking up random objects and putting them down again. She held up a teacup completely intact, while her entire kitchen was scattered across the street. The weird part is how selective tornadoes are. They'll obliterate a whole house but leave a single flower standing perfectly untouched in the garden. Nature's got a twisted sense of humor sometimes. I kept calling for Mom and Dad until my voice went hoarse. Every shadow made my heart jump, thinking maybe they were trapped somewhere, waiting for me to find them. But the silence felt different now. Not the peaceful quiet after a storm, but something hollow and permanent that made my stomach twist into knots. The school's roof was completely ripped off, scattered in metal sheets across the parking lot like someone's giant deck of cards. Fires had started in at least 4 houses when the power lines snapped. The whole neighborhood smelled like wet concrete mixed with something sharp and metallic. Emergency crews swarmed everywhere, their walkie-talkies crackling with coordinates and damage reports that sounded like they were talking about some war zone instead of my street. Then there was our garden, Mom's pride and joy completely flattened. Those tomato plants she'd been babying all summer were just green pulp mashed into the mud. The cherry tree Dad helped me climb last week was split right down the middle, its branches reaching in opposite directions like it was trying to hug the whole destroyed world. But the craziest thing? Our mailbox stood perfectly straight, flag still up, like nothing had happened. Rescue teams moved through the debris with trained efficiency, calling names through megaphones that echoed off the broken walls. They had those search dogs too, German shepherds sniffing through the wreckage for signs of life. Each time they'd pause and dig, my heart would stop, hoping and dreading what they might find. My own dog pressed against my legs, whimpering at sounds I couldn't even hear. The temporary shelter opened at the high school gym, the same gym where I'd played basketball just last month when everything was normal. Red Cross volunteers handed out blankets that smelled like industrial soap and sandwiches wrapped in plastic. Everyone moved like they were underwater, slow and disconnected, trying to process what had just happened to their lives. Well, here's something nobody tells you about disasters. The paperwork starts immediately. Insurance adjusters showed up before some people even found their pets. They walked around with clipboards, calculating our lives into dollar amounts. The whole neighborhood's property value dropped 36% overnight. 36%. Like our memories and histories could be reduced to some market calculation. Emergency workers found the Hendersons' car 3 blocks away, sitting upright in someone's backyard pool like it had been gently placed there by a careful giant. The tornado had picked it up, carried it through the air, and set it down without even cracking the windshield. Meanwhile, their house looked like it had been put through a blender. Volunteers kept offering me food and asking where my parents were. I didn't know how to answer that question anymore. They weren't here, and I had no idea where here even was for them now. The familiar landmarks that would help them find me had been erased. How do you meet up with someone when all the meeting places have disappeared? The sky started clearing as afternoon wore on, patches of blue breaking through the gray clouds like the storm was apologizing for what it had done. But apologies don't rebuild houses or bring back people. They don't explain why some families were together in their basements while others got separated in the chaos. Standing there in the wreckage, clutching my scared dog and watching strangers sort through the pieces of my neighborhood, I realized something that chilled me more than the wind. This was just the beginning. The real challenge wasn't surviving the tornado. The hard part was figuring out what came next when everything you counted on was gone. I keep staring at this photo of Mom and Dad that someone found 3 houses down. Their faces are muddy, but they're both smiling at the camera. Probably from last Christmas when Dad burned the turkey and Mom laughed so hard she snorted eggnog. The weird part is how perfect their expressions look, despite being covered in tornado dirt. Like the storm couldn't touch their happiness, even when it touched everything else. The insurance guy keeps tapping his clipboard and muttering numbers I don't understand. 36% drop in property values across the entire neighborhood. Makes sense, right? Who wants to buy a house where nature just proved it can toss cars around like toys? He's wearing this crisp white shirt that makes me feel dirty just looking at him. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here in yesterday's clothes that smell like fear and broken wood, clutching my dog so tight he keeps giving me these worried looks. But why does he need to keep reminding everyone about the money stuff when people are still missing? The volunteer lady, she's got kind eyes and hands that shake when she pours coffee. She told me they're still searching through debris piles. Over 1,000 homes destroyed, she says, but her voice gets softer when she mentions the numbers they don't want to talk about yet. The numbers that aren't about houses or cars or property values. Then there's this kid, maybe 8 years old, who keeps asking everyone if they've seen his goldfish. His goldfish. The tornado took his entire house, flipped it inside out like a jacket pocket, but he's walking around with this little fishbowl asking if anyone's seen Bubbles. Part of me wants to laugh because it's so ridiculous, but mostly I want to cry because I get it. When everything big disappears, you focus on the small stuff that still makes sense. The high school gym smells like sweaty sneakers and industrial cleaning products, but it's become home base for everyone who doesn't have anywhere else to go. They've got these folding tables set up with donated clothes, and I swear someone brought their entire wardrobe. There's this bright yellow dress hanging there that's probably 3 sizes too big for me, but it's the first thing I've seen all day that isn't gray or brown or covered in mud. Color feels weird now, like it doesn't belong in this new world where the sky can just reach down and rearrange your life. My dog won't leave my side, which is fine because I'm not planning on letting him anyway. He keeps twitching every time the gym doors slam shut. The sound probably reminds him of our house falling apart. Smart dog. I'm twitching at random sounds too, like when someone drops a coffee cup or when the PA system crackles to life. Everything sounds like it might be the beginning of another disaster. The rescue teams have these megaphones that echo through the neighborhood all day and night. They're calling out names, asking people to respond if they can hear. It's like the world's worst game of hide and seek, except nobody chose to hide, and the stakes are everything that matters. I keep waiting to hear them call Mom's name, or Dad's name, or even my name. Well, someone should be looking for me too, shouldn't they? Local news crews showed up around noon, and now there are reporters everywhere asking people how they feel. How do you think we feel? Our houses got eaten by the sky, Karen, but people keep answering their questions anyway, probably because talking to someone with a camera makes it feel more real. Like if it's going to be on TV, then maybe someone official will actually do something about it. They're already talking about new building codes and stronger foundations for when people rebuild. Storm shelters in every house, they say, better warning systems. Tornado-resistant this and tornado-proof that. The builders are practically giving seminars to anyone who'll listen about how to make your house bulletproof against the next time Mother Nature decides to throw a tantrum. Funny how everyone becomes an expert after the disaster hits. The sky's finally clearing up, and I can see actual blue between the leftover storm clouds. It's almost insulting how pretty it looks now, like nothing happened. Like this morning we weren't all hiding under furniture praying the roof wouldn't end up in the next county. Nature's got a twisted sense of humor, cleaning up her mess and putting on this innocent act. I keep looking up at those patches of blue, listening for voices I recognize. The volunteers say they're still finding people, still reuniting families, still hoping, and tomorrow morning they're expanding the search to places the storm might have carried people. Places we haven't thought to look yet.